You're listening to Galaxy of Film. All right, welcome back to the brand episode of Galaxy of Film. I'm, of course, your host, Max, and this week, while I am rocking this co-host list, I am not alone. We have a very special episode lined up for everyone here. This has been in the works for quite some time now. We got a couple special guest stars for this, actually. We are, of course, discussing some Muppets this week. But first up, for our first guest, we have Guy Gilchrist. You are known as Jim Henson's cartoonist. You created the Muppets comic strip that was running in newspapers and whatnot. You help with the Muppet Babies creation, of course.
I remember when it was running and whatnot. That was not as successful as the newspaper thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you know, when it ran in whatnot, no one could really find it. So the newspapers worked out better.
Awesome. Regardless, though, you are legendary in the world of Muppets.
We're horsing around with you, buddy. You said the Muppets comic strip that ran in newspapers and whatnot. I wasn't
sure.
No,
it's all good. But welcome to Galaxy of Film, Guy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. I was supposed to do Galaxy of Whatnot, but I'm so glad I'm here on Galaxy of Film.
We are too. It's wonderful to get you on here, man.
We're
not alone here, of course. We do have Greg Berg, who's also involved with some of the projects we're talking about today as well. You are known as the voice of Baby Fozzie and Scooter with the Muppet Babies. Welcome to Galaxy of Film. How are you doing, Greg?
Well, it's great. I think I might hire a guy to write me some lines, too.
That's awesome, man. That's actually really cool.
Wocka Wocka Wocka!
Yeah!
That's incredible. So, of course, we are here to discuss, like I said earlier, Muppets Take Manhattan and Muppets Babies. The actual 84 cartoon. I know there was kind of like a revamp continuation, new series going off on Disney Plus as of 2018, I think. But yeah, we're focusing on the original here this week. But before we kind of go ahead and start talking about our main topics, I kind of want to dive into your guys' career for a little bit. Guy, like I mentioned, you are basically Jim Henson's cartoonist. You know, that was your main role working of stuff, and you became a very pivotal role, or had a very pivotal role in creating a lot of other properties and working on Muppet properties as well. How did you get into this kind of business with it being involved with Muppets?
It's a very long story, and
okay.
But I'll try to sort of bullet it.
Okay.
Mort Walker, the great Mort Walker, the creator of Beetle Bailey, High and Lois, Boner's Ark, and the founder of the Museum of Cartoon Art in Connecticut and New York. So Mort knew of me, and his comics were distributed worldwide by King Features in New York. And Mort knew of me. I did a funny animal comic for Weekly Reader. And so Mort was playing golf with the head of King Features, and Bill Yates was his name. And Bill was lamenting the fact that since 1978, Jim Henson had been searching for someone to write and draw the Muppet Show. Because he knew even back in 78 that at some point, he was going to cease production of the weekly show and do other things, which of course we know he did. And anyway, so Bill was saying, we've tried 200 people out, different teams, writers, artists. These Henson people are nuts. We have nobody left. And so Mort says, that's a frog and a pig, right? And Bill says, yeah. He says, well, there's this hippie kid that I know that hangs out down by the down at the museum. And so King Features called me. I was shocked, of course, just absolutely blown away. And this was, a huge opportunity, an audition.
Mm-hmm.
I auditioned. My audition consisted of doing 6 daily comic strips, writing and drawing those, and doing a Sunday page. And then I wrote some other jokes out and illustrated those as well in pencil. I went to New York City. Bill liked it, asked me if I could do some more. And now I'm going to kind of cut to the chase.
Mm-hmm.
I decided basically the day that I walked into 117 East 69th Street, or even before that, and that's where Jim Henson's office was in New York City. I decided when I had this opportunity, and Bill liked what he saw, sent it over to Michael Frith at Henson, and Michael thought it was okay, and they requested more, that I decided I was going to have this job. And until someone called me and told me I didn't have the job, I had the job in my own mind. And
That's beautiful.
So for 10 months, I kept drawing for free while I was doing the comic, just until somebody was going to call me and say, we gave somebody else the job. I just kept on going. So that's, and then the phone rang about 10 months after my initial, call from Bill. And it was Jerry Jewell, Jim's head writer. And he started talking gags with me. And I was like, Mr. Jewell, this is like such an incredible honor, but like, why are you doing this? Why are you calling me? And he said, well, didn't Michael call you? Didn't Jim call you? Oh, you've had the job for a month. And that'll give you a foreshadowing of, what things were like with Jim in those days, how busy we were and how hectic things were. But anyway, so I was given that job. Now, many of your listeners and viewers won't really understand what a newspaper comic strip, because they're almost irrelevant today. However, in the late 70s and in 1980, when I got the job, the second most important thing that you could have to put yourself in front of people besides a television show was not a movie. It wasn't a radio show. It was a newspaper comic strip. And it was in front of everyone every single day. People always say, oh, like the Sunday funnies. Yes, the Sunday funnies, but it's the Monday through Sunday funnies. And the way that we did it was unlike any other comic strip in the history of comics, and so it will always be this way. Jim, we worked it out. We worked something out that was impossible. Remember, this is before computers, before anything. The comic strip that you would read in whatever town you were in, Sandusky, Ohio, New York City, or Helsinki, or Tokyo, or New Zealand, wherever you were in the entire world, no matter what language we're talking about, Spanish, French, Swahili, Polish, every language in the world read the same comic on the same day. And it's the only comic that there ever was that did that, because it's basically impossible to do. Normally, Mickey Mouse, you write it, you illustrate it, you publish it here in the United States. 2 weeks later, it's translated into French and Spanish, gets sent out to them. And then you have about a year's worth. You send a year's worth of them all around the world, and they print them whenever they want. Jim said, no, whatever guy writes is going to be read. If I'm in Athens, I want to read it. If I'm, in Paris, I want to read it. And so that's what we did. And that's the reason why, although, Peanuts is the most popular comic of all time, the comic that had the most people reading it every single day was mine.
That's incredible.
there were 150 million people
Mhm.
estimated that read my comic every single day for 5.5 years. And so, so in the Muppet world,
Mhm.
and to the world, uh, the Muppet show continued through the 80s because of the comic.
Absolutely. That's beautiful, man. I absolutely love the persistence through it, despite having to wait for so long to get the final like job offer, the final confirmation. And then just going forward with it and taking it beyond the reaches of the original show. I love that. Absolutely. So let me ask you this real quick as well. How did the how did your involvement with the Muppet Babies cartoon kind of start off with? Because obviously that's going to come time back around to with Greg getting involved with Muppet Work soon. How did you like start up the show and whatnot with them?
Well, what happened was, so I was
Mm.
drawing the Muppets as cartoons,
Yeah.
okay, every day. And if you go and Google the Muppet Show comics by me, you'll see that I'm animating the characters, I'm drawing the eyes larger, and now they're black and white cartoons and color cartoons on Sunday, and they're not puppets.
Mm.
They're caricatures of the puppets. And as I said, the eyes are bigger than they actually are on the puppets. The mouths move in a different way. They're animated.
Hmm.
And so if you look at my style of drawing and inking, you'll see it's very close to what the babies eventually, became. Now, unbeknownst to me, because I was always working in what we called Muppet Headquarters North,
Okay.
which was my studio in Connecticut, and I would go into 117 into Manhattan for meetings and stuff constantly, but I did not work every day at 117. I was working back home.
Mm.
Anyway, so unbeknownst to me, the beginnings of Muppets Take Manhattan, were happening, and Jim had this idea for a dream sequence, and so they were working on what in 117 they were working on what some of the characters would look like as babies. Well, Michael K. Frith, who, if you guys are Muppet fans at all, you know
Mm.
who Michael is. You've seen his name, right under Jim's forever. And he's creative director, and Michael was my boss. And Michael called me up and said, "Hey, so Jim wants so we're gonna have the all of the Muppets are going to be babies in this dream sequence that we're messing around with." And he said, "I'm going to show you something. You'll see it in FedEx. FedEx had just been invented."
Okay.
Um, and so he had sent me a Polaroid that they were sculpting what would be baby Rolf's head. Okay.
Hmm.
The foam for it. And he said, "Here, take a look at that." So I get it, and then I call him back. Yep. So this was on like a Tuesday, Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday noon or something like that. And I'll go, "Oh, this is neat." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "So concentrate on the big six," meaning the most popular
Mm.
are six characters. He said, "But Jim wants to see what you think they would look like as babies, you know, because I was the one that was drawing, cartooning them every
Mm.
day." And but have it in here by Thursday morning. And so this is not uncommon.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Just drop everything and just do what you can. And I'm going, "Well, Michael, you mean like, so you said, but draw all the Muppets as babies?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "Well, you understand that Statler and Waldorf will still be 44 years old." And he laughed. He goes, "Guy, enough with the jokes." And he says, "But I know, I know, I know." So anyway, Um, uh, we hang up, and I'm not talking about Robin being a tadpole and this and that.
Mm.
Can we open can we open baby Janice's eyes? Because I don't think we want like a stoned baby. I'm like saying the stuff. And Michael's going like, Guy, get to work. And because he said it has to be on my desk by 9 a.m. on Thursday, which basically left me half a day Tuesday, all night, and Wednesday to do whatever I was going to do. And anyway, so I drew as much as I could and got on the train and brought it up, on Thursday morning. And Jim saw it, liked it. And so that was tossed into the mix of how these characters were going to be, done. And many of the characters, the way that I drew them, basically they stayed about the same. Baby Kermit, Rolf, Fozzie, we changed his hat. But you can tell that I worked on it because, when you look at baby Kermit and all the characters, you'll see that there are these 3 little lines that are drawn on the sides of the mouth where the cheeks are. Well, that's how I draw. That's the brush line that I use. And so even though the characters were being inked with a stylus on cells and not brush, people saw what I had done. The artists over there, the animators saw what I had done, and that became part of the style of the babies. So if you look at my Kermits, I just have these 3 lines. I stole it from Walt Kelly. Walt Kelly, who did Pogo, he had this a way to make characters even more adorable, and it was these little lines that he put in cheeks. And I think Michael and I both were huge, and Jim Henson, all of us were huge Walt Kelly, Pogo fans. So anyway, that's what sort of started it. And then basically almost immediately, and I was already doing Fraggles. But my main job, of course, always was writing and drawing. And I had my brother helping to write, and he colored the Sundays, Brad. But I had 150 million people to entertain. There was no staff. There was just me and Brad at writing. So I had to be very selective, basically, because Jim wanted me to work on everything. And I was so grateful that he wanted me included in everything. And but the babies, it just couldn't be denied. I mean, I basically, I was one of the creators, along with Isabel Miller, Michael, and Jim Mahan of the babies. And immediately I started doing toys, the toys and everything. And,
of course,
yeah. And we would actually use coloring books. I would use coloring books to develop the characters. Like, because there wasn't a lot of line art, obviously, on the babies, the show wasn't out yet, but we needed product because, you have like a 6-month window to get stuff out. So, like, for instance, I would paint the characters for a cover for Random House, and without having seen them at all, just coming out of my head, okay, we think they're going to look like this. But then the show would be being developed, and maybe 3 months after I did the initial painting for the cover, I'll actually start working on the interiors. And by the time I'm working on the interiors for the book, I may have drawn the characters now another 2,000 times. And I'm drawing all of these pages for coloring books, knowing that we're going to use this art as a style guide for other people to use, to know what the characters look like and all of that. So we would do that sort of thing all the time. And then, so my job became, after I did the initial work on the development, my job became do as many paintings for toys and books and products. Everything from like the Dixie cups to
Hmm.
you know, the metal lunchbox, anything that we could think of that I could possibly work in. The babies just became something that I never had any spare time. I just those 10 years working for Jim. I always say I started in 80. Jim passed away in 90, and
Hmm.
sometime in 91 or so, I eventually took a nap. You know, uh,
Gosh.
we were just it was 24/7.
Hmm.
And the babies were the biggest thing. They were such a huge hit.
Hmm.
Uh, thanks to all of the incredible talent, including the man whose voice was two of the characters. Uh, it was just such a huge phenomenon, and I'm very very grateful, to
Hmm.
have been on that.
Yeah, it sounds exhausting, but very rewarding. Obviously, it paid off. The Muppet Babies were a massive hit. They've had a huge legacy, and like I said, they're back now in a whole different kind of stage, of course. But the fact that you were like the
Yeah,
pioneer for the Muppet Babies is incredible.
and the revamp one that came out a few years back, it's been much maligned,
Mm,
by the purists and stuff, and I get it. Look, I'm one of the guys that was in on it,
mm,
um and I totally get it. But um the guys that worked on it, it was done for for babies. It
mm.
really was. The revamp one, the reboot, was really for babies, and it wasn't for the whole family like the original one was.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's not
It was a
an
different.
imaginary adventure kind of deal every time.
Oh, all the
It's
yeah.
mm,
And I didn't have anything to do with it, um with the reboot, but I really didn't have to.
mhm,
You know, when we were doing that artwork for Jim, and you know, people go, "Are you working on the new one?" I'm going, I don't have to. They already have 25,000 drawings of the babies that I've done. They can scan to their heart's delight and
yeah.
3D, and 3D like crazy, for years and years and years. And no, 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 but it was very, very sweet. It was some of the guys that did the voices of the new version.
Mm.
They would write to me and go, "Dear Dad."
Oh, that's sweet, actually. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
I didn't know any of these guys, and
Mm,
eventually I met them out on like the Comic-Con trail,
hmm.
uh, and so incredibly sweet. I would get notes from some of the actors, and it'd say, "Hey, be sure that you watch on such and such a date, because they put like some sort of little Easter egg in,
Mm.
you know, has something to do with myself or Michael or whatever, something had to do with us old guard."
That's awesome. I'm
They
glad
were,
they're keeping you in the loop at least too for it. That's nice.
yeah, yeah, very
Mm.
sweet. Yeah. Hmm.
That's awesome. I'm glad we got to talk a little bit about Muppets Take Manhattan with that too. It's cool to hear you like being involved in that really early on as well. I actually had a chance to go to the Henson exhibit in Baltimore last year. And there they have the props for Baby Piggy and Fozzie, which is pretty cool.
Mm.
So it was really nice to be able to see that in person. But kind of
Well,
rapid.
Muppets Take Manhattan for me
Mm,
is like watching home movies, because all of the extras,
mm,
because everybody that worked at Henson, including me, but I'm not, I never seen me in the final, cut or anything, but like everybody that worked at Henson and all of their families, uh, were in all the crowd scenes and all of that.
yeah,
So
it's huge too.
spot, yeah, so I can spot, a lot of people, and even after all of these years, sometimes I'll do these Q&A, like, an evening where I'll host it in a theater, right?
Mm.
And so when I'm watching it on the big screen, I'll go, "Oh, well, I'll be darned, there's such and such." There's Christina, Michael's daughter, or there's
Mm.
John, or there's David Lazer's family, or or there's such and such one of the secretaries or the artists, because of course we were all working in Manhattan.
Mm.
So if you need to fill up a Grand Central, or you need to fill up a restaurant or anything, well,
call
there
everyone
we
on
go,
payroll.
right?
That's funny. That's awesome too. But kind of tying back to Baby Fozzie for a second, Greg, I'm curious on how you got involved with the Muppet Babies. How did you pick out, or how are you given the voice of Fozzie and Scooter? What was that whole process for you? Because you've already been familiar with other properties as well, such as like Ninja Turtles at this point.
Well, at that point, it was about 1984 that they were casting for the voices,
Mm.
and I had been in town at least 6 years prior, uh,
Okay.
auditioning and studying and looking for places that I could fit in, because at that point, the voiceover market in Los Angeles, at least, was a very tight market of maybe old time radio actors and some current actors that had been on TV that they used. And so I was a new young voice in the crowd. And as time uh, went on, younger voices were needed. So I was in that little pool of people they'd go to and say, let's see what voices a younger guy can come up with.
Mm.
And then here you got Muppet Babies. And so they put the call out for young sounding Muppets. So those people that were already around, the actors around, they knew the Muppets and all that, and I'm sure they said, "Oh, let me try out for it." And they tried, but they went with a younger sounding crowd,
Mm.
and so I read for Fozzie and Scooter, and then got the call saying I'm going to be doing both of the voices. And so I'm very grateful that they heard the big difference, that I can jostle my voice to ends of the spectrum and still have them both their own characters. But so I get the call, say, okay, audition. We auditioned. Then I get the call that I got it, and to help us understand what they're going for, we were sent videotapes at the time of the characters themselves, and it was up to us to get familiar with them and then project it as they were looking for. So that made some Fozzie videos, and I'd say, okay, he's telling jokes, but then he's also a friend to Kermit and his best friend and all. And Scooter was the stage manager usually in the Muppet Show, and they said, the grown-up Scooter that Richard Hunt did was more like, hey, how do you do? It's good to see you, and all this. And hey, Kermit, you're on in 5 more minutes. And at that point, I still had a very young voice, so I just tightened it up, and I made him like up here. But he says, hey, Kermit, let's go out today and find some new adventures. So
That's awesome.
that's Scooter, the young Scooter voice. Now, what they did to it throughout the growth of the show and reboots and all that, I don't know what their manner was to get the cast involved in it, or did they watch old episodes with me? I don't know, but that's kind of the start of it. But I did see the movie Muppets Take Manhattan and said, "Oh, that's cute, babies." But then later on was when they came up with the idea to turn them into an actual show.
That's incredible. It's awesome that both of you guys were here from the very start of it and your own perspectives for it too. I love it. I absolutely love it. Gosh, Fozzie's. Oh, this is so cool, man. Fozzie's my favorite Muppet.
Thanks. Well, it's he loves everybody who loves him. I go to the various Comic Cons occasionally that feature shows such as ours, the retro shows probably now, and former kids come up to me, and kids saying how they learned from Fozzie that they wanted to be a comedian.
Yeah.
And go for it. My background was not as a stand-up comic, but I did work at the Comedy Store in Hollywood and
Okay.
Westwood. They had one there, and so my training had originally been to come out to Hollywood to do comedy character work. And that was about the same time Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy were out.
Mm.
So there's a lot of that going on. And so I went and trained and did as much as I could with the workshops that were out here. And then a part comes up where they needed somebody with a comedic take. And it all came together. So I'm very grateful that all that happened and thankful for people that enjoyed what I did and to entertain the Muppet fans out there.
That's awesome, man. It was like Fozzie was like your spirit animal almost. It was always meant to be.
And Scooter, whatever he was supposed to be. And speaking of Guy Gilchrist, here's a little original guy.
Oh.
It looks exactly like you, Greg.
There you go. Wocka Wocka.
Well, you know, it was interesting when we were figuring out you know, the personalities of the characters. You know, Fozzie, Fozzie really baby Fozzie, he was sort of a natural to be you know, best friends with Kermit in a in a little bit different way than he was best friends with Kermit on the Muppet Show and in the Muppet movies, you know, because since they were going to be the same age, and you know, and best friends when you're very very little, you know, you do everything from you know make mud pies and stuff like that together to riding bikes together to doing you know basically everything you know together and being you know a confidant and all of that, and that's the way that was the undertone. You know, when you're creating characters, you're not just writing jokes. You know that we can have some funny business over here, some funny business over here, and you work that out. But to me, you know, well, I'm basically a writer who hires the cheapest illustrator he can find himself. That's how I look at myself. So, you know, in the exact same way that in the Muppet movie, you know, it went from you know Kermit, you know, giving confidence talks and things like that to Fozzie before he'd go out on stage. You know, we had worked it out where now they were road buddies, right? You know, it was a road picture, and so they were, you know, together always. Well, that was the same feeling that we had when we went into the babies, and with Scooter, you know, computers were a brand new thing in the mid '80s, and so you know, being sort of the you know, and he is a gopher, as we know, you know, he you know goes for this, goes for that, but he really is, you know, a Muppet gopher. You know, in the theater. So we thought, well, you know, then he's the guy that's sort of going to keep everything on pace and this and that. So we made him the computer kid, you know, the kid that liked, you know, video games and all of that. And then of course there's always, you know, everybody always likes to talk about, you know, whatever happened to Skeeter.
I was about
You
to
know?
ask. There's a couple different things you mentioned real quick. You know, obviously you had to do a different relationship kind of style for Kermit and Fozzie, but there's a few other changes of Muppet Babies. There is Skeeter that's into the show and it's kind of only here, but also like there's a couple weird things too that's different. Where like Gonzo has a crush on Piggy that's constantly over here too throughout the whole show. Why were some
Well,
of these
and
changes?
actually,
Okay.
and it's actually a callback to season 1 of the Muppet Show. Uh, Initially, when Dave was doing Dave Goals, when he was doing Gonzo's overriding thing before there was chickens was that he was infatuated with Miss Piggy, and so we decided to do a callback on that
Oh.
to do a callback on that,
Mm,
uh, because uh, we wanted something to be something to annoy Piggy,
mm.
and what better than that little geek?
That's perfect. I didn't realize that was a callback. That's actually really smart, actually, too. That's great writing. That's really smart. And then you keep going on, you're saying about Skeeter though as well.
Well, yeah, and
Mm,
the reason we needed Skeeter um, was so we already know pretty much we know the backstories of all of the Muppets from the Muppet movie, right?
correct, yeah.
But we don't really have a backstory for Scooter.
Mm,
Okay, and as I had mentioned earlier, when there's a dearth of female Muppets.
mm,
The most famous being, besides Piggy, being Janice. But Janice's eyes don't open.
mm.
So when I was designing her as a baby, she wasn't working. When you opened up her eyes, she no longer looked like Janice.
Oh, okay.
And so, but we had thought like, oh, in my mind, I was saying, oh, but Janice would be great because she's a valley girl, so she could have a skateboard and blah blah blah. Like
Mm.
and sort of like be down on the pier, right? Like a California girl, right?
Yeah, yeah, she could be a fun
And
character, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the thing was if that her eyes don't open, and because she just doesn't look like Janice. She just didn't look like Janice.
Mm,
So basically it was sort of like, yeah, but if we need, but a tomboy character would be fantastic. And so I'm not sure if it was Michael or Isabel or Jim Mann who said, well, let's just do another let's give Scooter a twin. And but it was absolutely perfect because all of the things that I had thought I could
mm,
do, if we had a girl, a baby Janice, we could really do with a character that we could just rock with, that hadn't been created yet, didn't have a backstory. And the
mm.
idea that, and also it was wonderful because now it gave us not only a tomboy who could be very active, where Piggy was prissy, and very girly girl.
Mm.
Uh, we could have a tomboy. But the other thing that it gave us, and Greg can speak to this, story wise as well, is that it gave us siblings and sibling rivalries and that sort of thing, because remember, none of the characters were related to each other, so they're the
Hmm.
only ones that are.
Yeah,
And
that's a good
so
point.
we were able to get into brother and sister stuff and just sibling stuff
Mm.
that we would have never been able to get into otherwise. So it just wound up being a brilliant idea all the way around. I mean, the only part that I had in it was going, well, I don't know, but if we open Janice's eyes, she could skateboard and stuff. So that's about all I had. And then yeah, I got to draw her a lot.
Mm. That's
When
cool.
people ask
Oh.
me, so whatever happened to Skeeter, I make up new stories every single time. I say, well, after she clerked for Condoleezza Rice, uh, she went over to the Supreme Court for a while. She was, and now she's a real estate owner. Uh, in Paris. I'll make up
Hmm.
all these things,
I love it.
that yeah, that she went into the Peace Corps, after high school, and that right now, she's hiking the Andes, or
Hmm.
she's studying, she's studying albino gorillas in on the island of Malta, just like anything. And they're going, oh, cool, like she's real. Oh, yeah, yeah. She's really, really fun. I think the next person that asks me, I'll she'll be working for SpaceX, I believe, next
There
time.
we go. That's awesome. I'm glad you're having fun with that too. Let's let's go ahead and just dive right into talking about some Muppet Babies overall of the show, since we've kind of been doing that already. Greg, off the top of your head, like obviously you're in the booth, you're recording for this, you're like Guy mentioned, like you're getting to build and develop these relationships firsthand with these characters here. What are some of like your most fond memories tied to specific episodes? Like, are there some standout episodes for you, or is it just kind of like clumped together? You just enjoy this whole project?
Well, we did this particular cartoon as a group most of the
Mm.
time, where we were all interacting with each other within the booth. It was actually the recording room. And so there's about 6 or 7 of us that would be there. And we'd know, don't talk over this person's line, or we had all the basic techniques of recording.
Mm.
Cartoons are more or less like old time radio, but you could they drew the stories for you to see these characters and animated them. So we recorded as a show, like old time shows. There's even like an something like the Muppet Broadcasting Company show where we put
Mm.
on a little radio show as well. But here
I
we are.
loved that one.
You remember that one?
Oh, I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's one that comes to mind. And actually, what some people don't know behind the scenes with these shows, the first show that aired, I believe, was a visit to the dentist's office or something like that. And that actually was the second or third show we recorded. So when it came to planning how to present the very first Muppet Baby show, that's the show that they used, uh, our third or second or third show, as the opening show to the Muppet Babies series.
Mm.
And so, yeah, we were given, we never knew each week what it was going to turn into. We had a fantastic writer, Hank Saroyan, who also directed us. And he would hear the characters in his head and then say, okay, now Ozzy's going to not get what everybody's talking about in this particular scene, or he just knew Fozzie was just a bright-eyed wonder, full of wonder to the other characters, and they all knew how to treat Fozzie as well. They didn't put him down and all that. They would just all yell at one time, Fozzie, what are you doing that for, or whatever.
And that's so, Greg, that's a terrific thing for to bring up, that that all of the characters, even though you could get annoyed, like, because you're all kids, and and if you're, and the annoyances and stuff are very, very funny. Everybody loved everybody. Everybody treated each other with respect, and everyone, even when Piggy, would be exasperated, or Kermit would be exasperated, there was never, we were funny without putting anybody down.
Mm. That's right.
Yeah, because it took place mostly in the nursery there. And so they all had to put up with each other forever there. And also, the added fun aspect was these short film clips. Like if they looked under the bed, you'd see the Star Wars fight going on with the battle, the spaceships, and that also was a fun part for me, because growing up, I remember watching a Bugs Bunny cartoon where there were so many of them, but one that stuck out was where Bugs happened to be in a forest and he looks up and Robin Hood would be in the tree. And then they used the clip of the real film Robin Hood,
Mm-hmm.
and he's yelling out to Bugs or something like that. Well, with Muppet Babies, they added a lot more timing to those film clips.
Mm-hmm.
And never knew what they were going to see when they opened the closet door or under the bed, or looking out a window or something like that. So a lot of that was tied in for the fun of the show as well.
I think that's some of the best stuff about the Muppet Babies show, in my opinion, or are those short film clips. It adds such variety. And the cool thing is looking back on it, because like obviously I was not alive in '84 to watch Muppet Babies, unfortunately. So like obviously some of these clips aren't like brand new to me, and I'm looking back on them years later. But when I was watching, for example, Raiders of the Lost Muppet, which is the Indiana Jones parody, seeing the Muppets use footage, like I'm seeing the back of Harrison Ford's head in the Muppet Babies cartoon. That's crazy to me. Like you
Yeah,
would never see crossovers like that at this point anymore.
well, and that's why, that's why you'll never see the 84, unfortunately, the 84
Hmm.
Muppet Babies come back.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but but Jim was beloved by everyone,
Hmm.
and Jim was an incredibly generous and very humble and funny, of course, genius who, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas not only adored and revered, but also Jim had done them favors,
Hmm.
huge favors. And so basically, we could do anything we wanted. Um, that's why that stuff is
Hmm.
there. Yeah, we had some PD stuff, public domain for people that don't know, but
Hmm.
we had, a lot of that sort of stuff, the Keystone Cops and all the silent movie kind of stuff. And also, like footage from, the government and stuff from the 1930s, 40s, and
Yeah.
crazy, really old PSAs and, school,
Hmm.
film strip sort of stuff. But yeah, we had Star Wars and we had Raiders, we had like the stuff that was in the
That's
theaters at
crazy.
that moment
Yeah. And
on
one of the
our
episodes,
show.
you're like blatantly like parodying Superman directly right before
Yeah,
doing Indiana Jones, I think. Like the next episode is that. That's
yeah,
insane. The amount
yeah.
of things you're able to the crossover and get away with this show. Like the Muppet Babies will go down as history for that, in my opinion. It's a
And
very,
for
very
the
bold
music,
show.
occasionally, I guess every show we did a song, or as far as I know, every show.
Yeah, each episode was 15 minutes, right? And so we'd have two 15-minute shows,
Hmm.
and there'd be a song in each show that had to do with, the overall arc of the show. And
Hmm.
those songs are brilliant.
They are.
Yeah. Uh, so that was another thing to look forward to. Actually, I think they were trying to make one of the songs a hit, uh, but I never heard it go as far as what it needed to do. But
Hmm.
a lot of attention on this one particular song, "Good Things Happen in the Dark," that they had, and they wanted to make that into one of the hit songs from the show. But whatever that takes to even do, I
Hmm.
know you had years ago Alvin and the Chipmunks with songs as
Hmm.
well, and they did hit the radio.
Yeah,
And
well, we had the
oddly enough,
yeah, well, we had Rainbow Connection, of
Yeah.
course, record, that was on the charts, and it was also recorded by, back in the day. I mean, everybody, well, Paul Williams, of course, wrote it.
Hmm.
Uh, but the Carpenters, did it. A lot of people did it. Um,
a lot of
we had a huge hit. Joe Raposo, who wrote a lot of the Sesame Street songs.
Hmm.
Brilliant, you know, uh, Grammy winner, and uh, we had Rubber Ducky was a huge hit on singles radio back in the day. The Ernie song.
Oh, my mom still sings it to this day, man. I'm 24.
There you go. Yep, yep. I'm awfully fond of you.
Yeah.
Oopie doo. Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
my
so
my
the Muppets,
girlfriend constantly
the
she
Muppets were definitely no strangers, to
mm,
the charts. There was a song that John Denver had a Christmas hit with, "When the River Meets the
yeah.
Sea," that Paul Williams had written for Emmett Otter.
Mm,
So, there were certainly I didn't know, Greg, that we were trying to get some hit singles, but I'm sort of surprised that we didn't.
Yeah.
That things didn't get pushed that way, because you would think that we would have. Some of those songs, the painting song, oh my God, it's so good.
Oh yeah. I think
Oh,
if that's
so
the one
beautiful.
artist for your heart.
Yes. Oh my
Hmm.
goodness.
Yeah. 'Cause one of the verses is, "It's music for your eyes."
So good.
Yes. So beautiful. I
Holds up
mean,
so much.
I mean, me being an artist or anything, you know, I'm not prejudiced in any way toward that song, but
Mm. No, a lot
Well,
of, I think.
you've got the Valentine episode too, where
Mhm.
Ross sang about "You're Special to Me," and Katie Lee, who did Rolf's voice, posted on her Facebook, as long as she remembers, for the Valentine's days,
Mhm.
uh, for people to pick up on. But yeah, it made her cry and us weep a little.
oh, that's such a beautiful song.
Yeah. So if you follow Muppet Babies, if you don't like animation,
Mhm.
listen to the songs.
So
Yeah.
good. All the music within
The only
Muppets holds up.
Muppet Baby song that I've actually ever heard on the radio, uh, and it was Joe Raposo that wrote it too. Um, and it's the very first one. Um, uh, the wanna be a movie star, wanna drive a car, be a veterinarian too, and I will always love you.
Oh, the one
Yeah,
that's in Muppets Take Manhattan.
yeah.
Ah.
That song was played on the radio.
Hmm.
Oh. All the Muppet songs holds up. Like all the Henson properties, in my opinion. Like you mentioned Sesame Street songs. Rubber Ducky's obviously a great hit. My girlfriend constantly sings Snuffleupagus' Meatball song.
Oh yeah.
They're constantly in rotation. It's awesome. I have one of I think it's like a Muppets Greatest Hits CD somewhere that has some of the stuff from Muppet Movie, Manhattan. I think a couple tracks from Muppet Takes Space, which is like the brick house track at the start of it. But just great stuff. Let's go ahead and kind of dive into Muppets Take Manhattan for a bit and kind of talk about that movie for a little bit. Um, Now, Greg, this one's pretty cool because this is directed by Frank Oz, who of course is adult, like grown up Muppet Fozzie. Now, do you feel like a sense of a shared character with Frank when it comes to like Fozzie? Like, how does that sit with you?
Well, I used his comedic projection as
Hmm.
keeping it with Baby Fozzie, because the videos we got were all of Fozzie on Muppet shows, and to give us an idea of what he grew up to be as well, because it's a psychological thing as well. When you're acting, you're acting as and reacting as the character that you're performing.
Hmm.
So, I don't think grown up Fozzie never interacted with younger Fozzie, even if he had a dream sequence somewhere. So there wouldn't be anything similar to pick up on. Like the laugh, the grown up Fozzie would go ha, but
Hmm.
baby Fozzie would go ha. So they have little innuendos there that were alike, but it was because I picked up on what grown up Fozzie was like, but I didn't. He wasn't as mature as
Hmm.
he was growing up, and not causing trouble with the rest of the cast and all that. He was still uh, had things going on in his head as grown up, as little Fozzie would be, just to come out and do whatever he was doing. So yeah, I mean, talking about doing voices for cartoons and all that,
Hmm.
it's actually doing characters for these cartoons and understanding all that. So a lot went into that. Some people just thought, oh, you just start talking like him and doing an imitation of him. No, it was more like being that person, and we all became a family on that show as well,
Mhm.
interacting with each other for so long that we were just those characters all through the show until it was the session was over, and we went on our ways. But it was like, oh look, the nanny's here, and we all revered what she was doing in the scenes and all that. And so it was. Uh, I did meet Frank. This was a wild story.
Okay.
Just happened to go into Beverly Hills one afternoon after
Mm.
I. It was about 1984. So when I got word that we were going to do the show and all that, I'm going to be Baby Fozzie and Scooter. But
Oh, so this was before it was out already, though.
yeah, before I don't know if it was even when we might have done a show or two because we started in June, uh, and it came out in September.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, but this has been a lot of my life, not coincidences because I don't believe in them, uh, but just the magic of connecting. So I'm in Beverly Hills, walking across the street, and coming towards me is a guy that looked like Frank Oz. And as I'm passing him, I go, Frank? He goes, yeah. And I said, oh my gosh, it's Frank Oz. And we're talking in the middle of the street, and he's like, oh no, come over here. So we went to the other side at the curb.
Mm.
And I said, I'm you. I'm actually, my name's Gray. So I try to get all that out,
Mm.
which sounds kind of weird, but yeah, he I said, I'm you as the baby for the Muppet Baby cartoon and all this. So we just said hello, and he said good luck and all. It was that brief, and then later on I met him when they did a get together of the Muppet Baby cast and crew,
Mm.
and celebrated it at a get together party. And so I have pictures of me with Frank holding Fozzie, and
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, they both showed up, and we had a great time. But the thing with so it was just odd that we did encounter each other, but
Mm.
we didn't talk about, oh, you should do this and this. I think it was all up to Jim to report to our director, from what I
Mm.
heard. But I rarely got any kind of, Jim doesn't like when you do this or that. It wasn't that. Jim would just tell the director, yeah, everything looks good, or don't make this person whiny as much. I don't know if he even brought that up from any
Sure.
notes that I might have gotten. So I don't know if with Guy, whether there were meetings saying, hey, can you not have this character screech so much or whatever when they talk, or any of that kind of direction. But we were just showed up and did our characters and kept them going.
That's awesome. That's cool. You got to meet him in such an odd way too, just bumping in the street, literally.
But I've had very I've had many encounters of things like I'd be listening to a radio show and,
Mm.
writing a letter while I'm listening, and just as I got to the word that I'm writing, they say it on the radio. I was like, how did that happen? But after it
Weird, man. That's pretty
To
cool, though.
to address, if you want me to address that, Greg, the characters and stuff. You see it in New York. So Jim is bopping all over the place,
Mm.
and uh, uh, I don't remember. I don't remember really a single time that we were talking about the babies, except that Jim said, "Oh, I'm loving this. This is looking good. This is looking good." And uh, the thing about the way that the Muppet structure was that Michael, you see, Jim was everywhere. So Jim by 84 would have been in at least three different places, with each of those places, needing him for
Mm.
different. he would have been at 117 in New York, but also when he was in New York, besides handling all the businessy things, of course, they would have been shooting Sesame Street.
Mm.
If he was in London, now when he's in New York, the London office, which was a smaller office and more connected to the film production, when things were being filmed over there. And for instance, like in '84, it would have been like Labyrinth. They would have been working on over there. So, but anyway, so when Jim was in New York, you'd have sort of London tugging at his sleeve and calling. When he was in London, of course, New York would be tugging at his sleeve. And then we also had Toronto, Channel 9 in Toronto, because that was where the Fraggles was being filmed. So basically, Michael Frith was sort of Jim all the time, for all of us. Like Michael knew everything backwards and forwards, could draw better than anyone, could write as well as anyone, and understood Jim, just intimately understood Jim. And Jim really respected Michael so much. And so a lot of the talks that we would have about the babies and what they could do and what they couldn't do would be with Michael.
Okay.
Because Michael was basically like the executive producer, of the babies, because like I said, the discussions that I had about the babies and working on the babies with Jim was basically like, Jim would be like, well, you seem to be doing it all. That's all it, so are you getting any sleep? Something like that, and that was about it. It was like, if you were on the project, then you were on the project because Jim felt that you were in sync and vibing with how it was to be. There wouldn't be anyone involved that wasn't getting it. And that was really my, sort of my take on it. I know that Michael had quite a few, talks, had sort of a lot of talks with Jeffrey, that wrote a lot of the scripts. And I believe that Jeff also, I guarantee it, although I can't tell you historically when this was or whatever, but I guarantee you that Jeff and everyone that was involved in writing the stories and the arc definitely, spent some time with Jerry Jewell, because, I learned to write Muppets from Jerry. I had a pretty good idea, but I didn't know it as, I would have known how to write the Muppet Show every day, for 5.5 years, and get it all exactly right and all of that. But Jerry Jewell was a very funny guy and a very kind guy, who understood the characters so well, and would have been incredibly invaluable, to Jeffrey and to anyone that was working on the babies.
That's awesome, man. There's so much Muppet history of this episode. I'm loving it. We haven't had a chance to talk Muppets within 160 episodes, and here we are going big or going home. I love it.
Well, there's a fan base out there, and I get an occasional letter here or there, like asking something to do with the show, which I didn't write them, but I participated in, and if it comes to mind, then I'd say something about it. So when people are asking me questions about the show, I'd say, well, maybe the writers would know more about that, or the creators. uh, as to like the guy said, what happened to Skeeter and all. Uh, but to hear back from the fans, it's great that they're still with us for hoping that the original show comes back. Who knows what it'll take? Even if they can edit it, that'd be great. Edit out the little clips and do a lesson kind of short.
Yeah, something, it's better to have some kind of version of it than nothing at this point.
I know when Guy was talking about the materials drawing for products and all that, somebody sent me an actual a brand new Pampers diaper with the baby's images all on them.
That's funny.
Then the records, of course, we had 2 albums that came out. And the story behind that, because people say, well, it's hard to find them. Well, what happened that I was told was that originally the same company that put out our albums for Muppet Babies and songs from the show came out with the Cabbage Patch Doll album prior. And it didn't sell as many as they wanted, and record stores had extra product and wanted to get their refund back for selling them, but the company didn't give them any money for their extras or whatever. So then when Muppet Babies came out on the same company, they said, so do you want hundreds of these records? They said, oh, no, give us just a few, and we'll see how it does. And I don't know, from there, what happens with the marketing of the various products, because as Guy said, there were various products to test the waters with that had the Muppet Babies on them somewhere, like Dixie Cups, I believe, and
hundreds of stuff, hundreds of things. And
Yeah.
we were so popular. I felt that we were incredibly fortunate that we got to work with the cream of the crop of companies, and we did really high quality, toys and games and books for everyone. The stuff, I know that the lunchbox I did was a bestseller. The Muppet Babies, the original Muppet Babies board game was like huge. I remember we did a drum set, where I had painted the everybody as like an 80s MTV band, on the bass drum, and everything that we did with the babies was like the number one thing, down to the McDonald's stuffed, the plushes that we did for Christmas.
I have a couple of those still, actually. I have some of those and some of the ones where they're it's the babies in like little vehicles as well.
Oh yeah, everything that we did was like the number one thing. It was there was a Miss Piggy Baby Piggy had her own line of like Avon cosmetic. And I know because I painted and painted and painted and painted and painted. And yeah, the Dixie cups, and there were tea sets, china, everything from really expensive things to, with, companies like Gorham and Enesco and, the big China companies. To really inexpensive, stuff, but incredibly well made.
There's probably Halloween costumes too, I heard.
I'm sorry?
I think there were Halloween costumes I've seen.
Those yeah, and I did those. Those were scary, dude. Those big, the big cutouts where the eyes are supposed to be. Yeah, that vinyl, those vinyl ones. Yeah, there was baby, and I think there was only 3. There was baby Fozzie, baby Kermit, and baby Piggy, and that's probably for the best. But yes, I drew those too.
That's hilarious. Bringing
We
it
did
back.
so much. We did so much stuff. I think for about 2 or 3 years
Mm.
at the studio, as far as babies, there were probably 10 projects a week on the babies
Oh,
that
jeez,
my
man, that's
studio
crazy.
was doing for at least like 2 years. So, uh, now some of those projects could have been very long projects,
Mm.
where we were, like I remember one project that took a really long time was the board game that we did, for, I think that was Milton Bradley. Um, and another project that took a very long time, was toothbrushes. So because it wasn't just the toothbrushes, they had all these Muppet baby toothbrushes, but they came in a display, a store display, that the entire thing was a giant acrylic painting that was as big as like the wall of my studio that I'm looking at right now,
Mm.
that it would wind up getting all folded, into this huge, display for stores, and would have all the babies on it with, with sailing ships being pirates and this and that and dolphins jumping and every kind of crazy thing you can think of, and we would paint all of that stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, there were, even when, you know, uh, our thing was we always overdid it, uh, because we believed in overreach. Anybody that's a Jim Henson fan, there are many sorts of fandoms, obviously,
Mm.
but if you're a Jim Henson fan, you're a Jim Henson fan for a reason, because you knew that Jim loved you, and that, there's something about Jim that he cares so much about you, and that's why you care about everything that he did. And anyone that worked with Jim, and this goes to the babies, uh, we always overdid it. Like, you can go online on eBay or wherever you want to go and look up all of these Muppet Baby toys that I painted. And there are literally a couple hundred or something. So you'll see all of these. You'll see the Muppet Babies logo with the heart. Okay.
Mm.
And on one side is a baby piggy, and on the other side is a baby Kermit head. Now, if it was a full color painted rack toy, you know, you understand what I'm saying? So the
Mm.
toy is in a plastic bubble on a background of some sort. And if that background of some sort was a painting,
Mm.
then the characters up there with the logo, I would have hand painted that. It's not the same one that you saw on another one or another one or another one. Um, we would do it we would do it specifically for that particular package.
Mm.
And crazy stuff. Off topic a tiny little bit, but I'll give you the idea. So when I painted the boxes for the plushes of Fraggles and Deucers, if you stacked all of the boxes up like you would like in a store,
Mm.
they all connected. The
Oh, that's
paintings
cool.
on the boxes connected. Um, so I would do these crazy things, and it was very encouraged. Jim encouraged it. Michael encouraged it. We all did these crazy things, and it went to the babies as well. The choices of the clips and all of that stuff that we did, the connections that we made between the toys and all products and the show. There was a ton of love and care, um, that really doesn't exist with any other company.
Mm.
Um, but there was a respect for every child, um, you know, and parent, and not thought of as a consumer,
Mm.
but as part of our family. And that was what I learned from Jim and from Michael, was that, that the audience was our family. And so we were all connected. Greg and and Katie, everybody that was on the show, us at 117, all of the animators, we were all connected. We and I think that that's why there's such good vibes around the show and around the property.
That's beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. And I agree. Very, very good vibes to everything Muppet related, pretty much.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hi, this is Tyler with Galaxy of Film, and for Stream of the Week, I got Trailer Park Boys, the movie. It's the movie from, I think it's after the first few seasons of Trailer Park Boys, the mockumentary-style Canadian comedy. It's from 2006. It follows three losers in the park, and they're just trying to live the American dream, bro. So they don't work. Like, that's like their whole thing. They don't want to work. They want to do like a big crime that gets them rich, and they want to retire forever. But like, when they have as many brain cells as I lost during watching this movie, it's not so easy. They tried to steal, I think it was one of those parking meters. Yeah, because they wanted to steal a bunch of change in parking meters, and it like didn't work. And the movie literally started off with two of them going to jail for a year and a half, and I forgot how it ended. Tyrone's rapping, everybody in the park got their way. I think they never did the big dirty. They never got rich. That's what I remember.
Let's go ahead and keep going back to Muppets Take Manhattan for a bit before we get wrapped up with this. Obviously, this is also like the second Muppet movie going forward. Muppets are leaving college, trying to get on Broadway. It's this big, grand adventure. We see this a lot.
It's actually the third Muppet movie.
Was this the third one? Oh, yes. How could I? Yes.
Caper.
You're right, Caper, correct. This was the second one I was introduced to, which is why I always mess it up. This is always number 2 for me in my rewatches. But yeah. Muppets are getting out of college, getting ready to go on Broadway, and it was kind of like this big trope for a while in movies where it was, go to New York or go home almost. We saw Friday the 13th also take this trip with Jason goes to Manhattan as well. A lot of films do this, and this was the Muppets' take on it, and is personally my favorite bit too. We get some great musical scenes together again. Is absolutely gorgeous at the start of this film, and they actually redid it again for Muppets Most Wanted later on with the Disney films too. Of course, we get the Muppet Babies track that you were talking about earlier, Guy. That is absolutely incredible. I love that entire sequence. Kermit gets amnesia at one point after being hit by a car. We get this really funny bit where he's with all the business frogs in suits, kind of living the Phil Gill life back and forth. And it ends with this big crossover wedding play. Like, we get the Sesame Street gang thrown in here in the chapel. Everybody's in this thing, and it ends up being the wedding for Kermit and Piggy, and it's so over the top, and it's beautiful. I love this film so much. It's my favorite Muppet sequel. Like I said, this is the first one I was introduced to as well, so maybe it's nostalgia, but like every time I go back to it, it feels like a production. Like it feels like I'm watching a Broadway, like brought to the screen almost. I love it so much. Greg, what are some?
It definitely has a different feel than the others, because Frank is directing it, not Jim.
Yeah.
And because it just, for one thing, Frank really wanted to do it, and and Jim and Frank had co-directed Dark Crystal. It wasn't making any sense at that moment, for Jim to take on directing. There were so many, projects happening all at the same time. And so Frank brought his own energy, to it. And of course, gee, he hasn't directed anything good since, now has he? I mean, he's just, wound up being one of the most respected, directors in Hollywood. But there's certainly an incredible energy. Also, there's the energy of, and Jim is just having fun.
Yeah. Everyone feels like they're having fun.
To the point where, I mean, when they're in Central Park and you've got, the coachman going around, Jim is a coachman.
Mm-hmm. They're one of the dogs too in the pound for Rolf when he goes and does the cutaway.
Yeah. Jim is just having fun. And also, everyone's sleeping in their own beds at the end of every shoot, because it's in New York. It's where everybody lives. So everyone's home. And everyone is home. Everyone, in much the same way that Muppet movie, the original Muppet movie, is very much, an idealized, caricatured journey of Jim, because Jim was born in Leland, Mississippi, in the Bayou, and then goes to Hollywood. Jim's successes, his first huge successes were in New York. Steve Allen and Jack Parr and the Tonight Show and all of that when he was still down in Maryland. So the lights of Broadway and all of that, and the familiarity of all of the surroundings, are great tributes, are great attributes to the enjoyment that you would have viewing the film.
Absolutely. And Greg, I'm very curious for you when it comes to Muppets Take Manhattan, because obviously a guy had some stuff early on dealt with Muppets Take Manhattan, being shown some stuff with the babies going off this, and with you coming on to the babies after this movie was made, what are your thoughts looking back on Take Manhattan, particularly with the Muppet Babies scene? Like, what are your overall feelings of this film?
Well, I watched it as the movie, and thought that was a cute segment when they did the baby flashback, and it had no idea that somebody got the idea to say, let's animate that and turn it into a show. Because Muppet Babies was,
and we were doing both at the same time, Greg.
Doing
we were designing the cartoon characters and the puppets at the same time.
They knew ahead of time they were going to do
wasn't
that like Jim's first animated
yes
show even?
Yes.
So because I have been telling people I got to be part of that, and so when they did say there's doing a show, I recalled the movie, and so then from there I took it, because I didn't think like, oh, what if they make a show out of that? I get some training and learn the characters. It was all just a typical showbiz call. So they come on in, try to voice these things. Nobody knew how big it was going to get or whatever. We won 4 daytime Emmys in a row through the course of the show. Plus, it was going to have.
And it's something that we have to. It's something that we have to remind your listeners and your viewers that remember in 1983 and 84, 85, you weren't able to just like be watching movies. VHS and beta and everything were sort of brand new, and so it would be like Greg could go see the movie and then find out he's got an audition and then watch the movie sequence over and over and over again to try to get the voice or something like that. You went to the movies and it was gone. You watched the television show, it was gone. This was must-see TV and must-see movies. Folks now go, oh, well, I'll just go on YouTube and I'll watch this thing. And, well, how many times have you watched that? Oh, 200. Well, that didn't exist back then, folks.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Guy, since you're on that other side of the camera, was there any talk at all of a Muppet Baby movie? Because I get asked that, saying, "Oh, they should have done a movie, or will they do a movie?"
Yeah, there definitely was. There was quite a bit of talk.
Mhm.
And I think it would have absolutely been a blowout, you know. But
Or what the
I
whole
don't think. But the thing was that that the way that we were doing the show at the time was very taxing to the animators and to the writers. We, we gave CBS a half an hour, and of course, it was the #1 show on CBS, and it was the #1 show on all of Saturday morning, the three networks.
Mhm.
So immediately they were asking for another hour. They were I'm for another half hour, so they could have a full hour from us. So we were trying a bunch of different things. We tried a show called Little Muppet Monsters, which I worked on very, very hard. And there was some animation done, with pigs in space, and
Mhm.
anyway, but uh, but but they wanted an hour, and and Marvel couldn't handle it. They were not big enough to do anything. So, we kept on talking about it, Greg, but we would have had to have an entirely basically different animation studio work on it. And that was scary.
Hmm.
Interesting, man. I know this much went behind Muppets Babies. It's awesome. I love it. I love how rich this episode is.
Well, I hope
I hadn't
you have.
even thought of all of that stuff for a long time, but that's what was going on.
Mhm.
Eventually what we did was after it was only after like 2 years of Babies, the second season, and then we were doing this Muppet Monster show, and Jim said no. He looked at the animation that was being done by Marvel, and he didn't think it was up to our standards, and so he shut the show down because Muppet Monsters was half puppets
Mhm.
and half animation. And Jim shut it down after 3 shows. We worked really hard on it too, but I could see that the animation wasn't up to the standards that we had. So reluctantly, it got pulled, and we got in touch with CBS and
Mhm.
said, well, why don't we'll give you a half an hour of new stuff, and the other half hour you could do reruns. And
Mhm.
they jumped all over it and said, yeah. And so that's how we proceeded from then on. And that's why you had the Muppet Babies hour. It was half new, half old.
Mhm. Dang, man. Goodness. So much Muppets, man. So much. So much of it. Never
Everything
enough
you
time.
never even knew you wanted to ever hear or know.
Never
Right.
think people put something like this together. So I hope you have a good audience that tells each other about this one.
Oh,
Because
absolutely, man.
the
Absolutely.
new one came out, but I haven't seen any kind of interviews with the people involved with that one.
I know. Only the best here at Galaxy Film. We got the exclusive take. Got the exclusive take. But guys, I think it's gonna go ahead and wrap it up for this episode. Guy and Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure getting you both on here to talk about the legacy of Jim Henson's, the legacy of the Muppets, the legacy of the Muppet Babies, and of course, Muppets Take Manhattan, of course, too. It's been an absolute pleasure getting you guys on here. Guy, where can our listeners follow you? Where can they follow your work and all that as well?
Well, we're all over social media.
Mhm.
I'm everywhere, and on Facebook and on the website, it's A Guy Gilchrist. production. And all you have to do is write my name and hit Google, and you'll find everything. We're very active on, Instagram and all of that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that I get to see everybody out on the road one of these days. I love doing the Comic Cons.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Next time you get one
And
of mine,
gosh,
I'm
if I
coming up.
didn't do the Comic Cons, I would have never personally hung out with the great Greg Berg.
I did finally get to meet last year after 30, 40 years.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
it's crazy that because we've worked together. We worked together for all those years, technically. But what folks don't understand is even if you're not on separate coasts like we were, when you're in production, and you're working very, very hard. And it's not rare, but it's not common that people that are working on the same project know each other very well.
Yeah.
Even if you're working in separate offices or this or that, because you have deadlines, daily and hourly deadlines. And so it's only so I love meeting the folks that we have something in common. That I could have even been their art director, from New York or something, and here we are meeting 30 years later. It's wonderful, and it's lovely for us to chat, and it's not even reminiscing, because it's getting to know each other, and
Yeah.
so that's been just really lovely.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. I'm glad that you guys have been able to not reunite, but being able to fully unite finally after all these years.
Oh yeah,
Meeting
wonderful.
anybody connected. I know. I mean, it was a wide blanket of people worked on these shows. I was invited to the studio once at Marvel, to their art department, and on their walls they had various pictures nobody else had seen, such as what Nanny's face looked like, because everybody has that. And so all along the walls, you see one that looks like a monster, another one looks like Marilyn Monroe or something like that. And so I've been there. Then I have been to the Henson offices in New York at one time. I made a stop over there, met with whoever greeted me at the door, the receptionist and all, but they let me see this studio they used for Sesame Street, or it was just Muppet Productions, because all the Muppets were they had them on wires attached to the ceiling, and when they needed that particular Muppet, they would lower it and then make use of it. But that's where they kept that group. But yeah, I got around, but yeah, meeting various artists or other people, creatives that were involved, and finally meeting Guy, and look forward to seeing him again. And the fans that myself, you asked what he's up to. I do the cons when somebody thinks of having something connected with Muppets there, or any of those shows that I've been part of over the last 40 years, actually.
And where can our listeners be able to find you on social media as well, too, Greg? Be able to find information on those cons.
I am on Facebook. I don't do much chatting. I use it more for, hey, watch out for this, or I'm interested in this. But I do see messages other friends might put up there. And for business or asking questions, I'm at idovoices@yahoo.com, which is my email. So yeah, because that whole I gave it a shot with the social media, and with so many people to answer and interact with, it took up a good part of my day, to where I wasn't being as productive with other things that I have to do.
I get that.
like doing voices, like being involved in Muppets. Guy says he's, it's 24-hour a day kind of attachment with voicing. Since I'm a multi-voice actor, I'm constantly looking for the next role that I'll be voicing and working on things. So, I am involved deeply with the shows as they plug me into it, but I'm not obsessed with it all 24 hours because I do have many other opportunities to put out there. So yeah, I'm a busy guy, but anybody who knows a con that I would fit into, because I'm not at all the cons, because some of the bigger ones are for those action superhero action figures, and I'm more of a family-friendly and retro kind of presentation. So
just a little bit.
that's where you can find me, and because it's the beginning of the year as well for many actors. They have an open book again to say, what are we going to do this year? So that's where I'm at, lining up future appearances. So as they come in, I'll be able to tell people about it on Facebook, and if they have questions. Sometimes I jump in on Muppet Central, which is a big organized Muppet website to every little facet of Muppets, from the costuming to the talent and writing and all that. People can write into that, and sometimes I check in on it to see if they mention, because there is a segment for Muppet Babies, and I saw many people asking, is it ever going to be made, come back out, or what's the holdup? And so sometimes I'll clear up a question or two.
Very nice, man. Very nice. I'm glad you're in touch with the community still too with it.
Forever Fozzie, I say. Yeah, I'm still here.
Wocka Wocka, man. Wocka Wocka. And for our listeners, thank you so much for sticking around for this week, guys. Stay tuned next week. We've got some more great stuff coming to you with the show. Of course, if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us an iTunes and Spotify review. It truly does help out the show much more than you can imagine. And you can also help support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, Galaxy of Film Productions. So, guys, we will talk to you all next time. Bye. All right, guys, coming at you with a special segment here. We got our man himself, the Autograph King, our Director of Fan Relations here at Galaxy of Film, Shamim Dana. How are you doing, man?
Good. I just found out that Thomas and Nicholas is performing at the last Blockbuster on April 7th.
Nice.
In Bend,
nice.
Oregon.
Very nice.
It is Sandy's second celebrity event. What he's going to be doing is going to be doing the screening of Rookie of the Year for its 31st anniversary. Q&A, acoustic show, and the meet and greet. I'm definitely going to go there and witness the joy of that. And we're now looking at a rough cut for the Autograph King around April Fool's Day.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, Scott's working hard on that. And then that's basically it for me now. And then, so.
Okay. We had a couple questions, I believe, for Greg here real quick as part of like a promo for your film. So go ahead and take it over.
So Greg, when was the first time you met Jim Henson?
That would have been during one of our sessions. He was in town, so the director brought him over to watch in. So I'd say the mid
84. So like the
I don't know whether it was the first year though, whether they warmed us up to do this session and then he came in one year,
so
or if it was one year.
Was it before or after Great Muppets Caper?
I have no idea on the dates of other projects, so I just remember meeting him at the studio recording, but then later on he threw a party for everybody who was involved with the show.
So that means like right after Muppets Take Manhattan, like around 85, you'd say? 86.
Maybe, because I don't remember if he came during the first year or first season. Sometimes they surprise you and do that and say, okay, the guy wants to look over the show or whatever. But,
How did you create your signature to like sign? I mean, when you sign your names, how did you create your name? Was it just do you have like? Yeah.
I made sure when I was signing for the Muppet Babies, it would say Baby Fozzie and Baby Scooter. I'm trying to think if I ever said Fozzie and Scooter or that, because I wanted to make sure they didn't get me confused, because that's happening sometimes with the Huckleberry Hound character I did, which was Young Huck, and that's what they called him. But people came up and said, "Oh, look, it's Huckleberry Hound." I said, "I'm not the original, but I was the young version."
So if you could, Greg, if you could meet anyone living or dead, who would you want to meet and why? Photo or autograph? Anybody, dead or alive?
Well, I mean, the go-to, I mean, gets kind of personal. I'd say Jesus is somebody I'd want to meet.
Have you ever met Michael Jackson or no?
I have met Michael Jackson, and this would have been before his Off the Wall album came out. It was right when he was doing The Wiz. And I happened to be walking down a street in Los Angeles on Sunset Boulevard, and he was getting his picture taken in front of actually, it was below the billboard for The Wiz. And I thought, why would he be doing that? I walked up, because I didn't know who he was at the time, but I saw him posing, so I just said, you look familiar. And I said, what's your name? And he said, Michael. And I went, oh, yeah, Jackson, right? And he said, yeah. And then I looked up, and the poster had his face on it with his on the credits. So I just told him, good job that he's doing that. And
so, did you recognize you at all, or no? Did he recognize you at all? Did he recognize you at all?
This would have been 1981, 82, something like that. But I told him I was a disc jockey before that.
Greg, thanks again for coming on.